Good morning. We're here at Life Church today with our first panel discussion with local industry experts in the business panel pathway. And we're going to start out by having each person introduce themselves, their name, their title, and where they're from.
My name is Mike Rathbun. I'm the Associate Director of Discovery Center Museum.
My name is Rebecca Epperson. I'm the president and founder of Chartwell Agency.
My name is Erin Stoffregen. I'm the owner of Event Floral.
So this morning, we're just going to talk amongst ourselves in a natural conversation and just kind of get some ideas about what it takes to be in the business field. So the first question that I'd like to ask you, Michael, is what education is necessary to work in the field in the role that you play at the Discovery Center Museum?
Well, as a museum director, I think there's a lot of different directions you can take to get to where I am. My particular background, I have a degree in community health from the University of Illinois. So I came in through the education department of a museum and learned the museum field from that point of view. But you could become a director coming through a marketing department, through a development department. So there's a lot of different degrees that could lead you to a museum director position.
Thank you, Michael. Rebecca, for you, how did you pick your area of study and into opening your own business?
So Chartwell is a marketing agency, and my background was journalism. I was a newspaper reporter initially, and I think at the end of the day, I just like telling stories. And so writing, journalism, public relations, marketing is all about telling a story. And so that's really gravitated to in like high school and college. I was on the school newspaper or in writing groups, and it just kind of made a path for me to go into public relations and marketing overall. It really comes down to storytelling.
Erin, can you tell me how you picked your area of study and how it led you into the field that you are into today?
Sure. Well, similar. We kind of just had a very organic progression. All through high school and college, I was at Event Floral working for the designing side of things, setting up events. I loved it. So I always thought I wanted something that kind of bridged that gap of creativity, but also still kind of an intellectual challenge. So when I came home to finish up and learned that there was some opportunity in Event Floral for maybe management or possibly even ownership, then I switched to studying business and definitely with a marketing track, management track, and also some marketing things, kind of just trying to build myself with those tools to be able to grow the business as we went along.
Great, thank you, Erin. One more question for you, Mike, on the education pathway. Would you recommend any specific high school courses to the students that they could take to prepare them for a career in this pathway?
Since there are museums that cover just about any topic you could imagine, I think taking a variety of courses is a great idea. The other thing I'd recommend is just get involved with activities. I didn't know what I wanted to do in high school. I knew I liked math. I knew I liked working with people. But by getting involved with activities like Key Club and Operation Snowball and things like that, it really piqued my interest and kind of led me to what I do for a living.
Rebecca, I'd like to ask you at Chartwell, is there any opportunity for any apprenticeship programs for students?
Sure. So we just reevaluated and started up not an apprenticeship, but an internship program at our organization. And so different organizations, whether they be corporate or they be agency like mine, do have several opportunities for internships. And sometimes that is what we call low-hanging fruit, like just assisting some of the executive directors within our organization with some of their work. And sometimes it's actually doing some writing for us. And so there's always opportunity if a person is willing and able and interested. Absolutely.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
And one last question in this section for you, Erin, is what high school courses would you recommend to any high school student, similar to what Mike was asked, would you recommend for them to take to prepare them for a career in this pathway?
Definitely. So it seems counterintuitive because we are a very creative field with flowers and designing. I actually wind up using a ton of math. So I know that seems, again, counterintuitive, but we're constantly calculating formulas and recipes and markups on the business side of the floral end, as well as on the production side. You know, how much do we need to drape a room? How much linear footage do we need for this or that? So any sort of math, critical thinking, always being able to think on your feet and problem solve. And then, just your basic like speech and communication. We have so many team members that, it's not formal training, but we have that ability to talk with people in the field, talk with customers, other vendors, things like that. So just really getting similar to what you said, well-rounded in a variety of things. But then especially if you love the creative side, definitely, foster that through art classes or things like that as well.
Thank you. Michael, what are some of the future trends at Discovery Center? And then what are some of the challenges at Discovery Center?
Well, I think the future for children's museums is finding ways to treat even younger audiences. For a long time, we went down toward preschool, and that's really great to do that. However, what we're finding is, and what science is showing, is that kids from birth to 3, those are the most critical years for language acquisition and learning. So we're really trying to find ways to encourage our youngest families to promote play and reading and discussions with their children, so their children's brains are ready for school. So getting younger, I think, is our big thing. And for us, so that's a challenge. How do you reach those youngest families? How do you encourage them to say, hey, my 1-year-old needs to go to a museum? That's not often something people think about, but it's real important to get your 1, 2-year-olds out into public, learning from experiences and playing out in public at museums and parks and zoos and all those other sorts of informal learning opportunities.
Rebecca, question for you on the career outlook in a field that you're in. What are some opportunities that they could take for advancement within a agency, or what does like the future trends in an agency type of a pathway look like?
Sure, I don't think it's any surprise to the students probably watching this that digital is much bigger and will continue to grow, and it continues to change. So we're growing and learning every single day. Hate to date myself, but like when I was going to high school, there was no internet and there were not computers. And so it was a whole different world of where I am today and where my company leads our clients in regard to digital marketing, but also it's really important as one big takeaway if you're interested in marketing or even management, and I think we can all agree that writing is going to be always critical to whatever you do. And so if you have the opportunities to take writing classes, creative writing classes, English literature classes, to learn to write, to read, to learn, those are the things that are going to be most critical, because no matter what we do in marketing, there's always going to be a need for that, whether that's digital or whatever the next trend is going to be after the digital era, comes to fruition, and then what's next. But the biggest things we're seeing really is how people are getting their information these days. Then, traditionally in the past, it was the TV news or the newspaper news, and now it's 85% of people get their information and their news from social media. So you have to identify where people are getting their information and attract them that way.
Thank you, Rebecca. Erin, I know that you had said that you kind of started in the floral business and learned it, got to know it, then found there was an opportunity for advancement to actually purchase the shop, which is amazing. So as you grow, as your business grows, how do you see advancement opportunities for the staff that you currently have in place?
Yeah, that's a great question. Because we are a small business, it's kind of myself and I have one other full-time manager. So that was a huge step even to have a manager full-time. The rest of our staff is primarily part-time, whether that's design-based or more production and event staff setup. So some of the advancement opportunities would be as we continue to grow, if we're able to offer additional rentals or go after additional like sales venues and partnerships, things like that. Maybe building further parts of management or things like back room management, things in those nature. So even though we're a big small company, we kind of say we're very much modeled after some of the bigger urban or metropolitan kind of design houses where there may be sales teams, graphics teams, things like that. So we're always kind of investigating which of those pieces we want to maybe step forward with and take us from wearing all of the hats to being able to kind of diversify and delegate those tasks to some other team members. So, you can start with very little training and kind of learn on the job as far as how we do event setups and install, or even some of the design side of things. But people who come in with a little more experience, whether it is in the design field or in the service industry or something like that, where they've, kind of have that natural inclination and that drive and that fire, they could, definitely step up into some of those more leadership type roles within the company.
Great, thank you. One of the biggest questions that students really like to know about is salary and benefits in your position, and what is the difference between an entry level and the higher level positions when it comes to salary? So Mike, if you could elaborate to us on what the salary and benefits expectations would be in your career, in your role.
Certainly. So the salaries can vary greatly in a museum field, and a lot of that will depend on the size of the museum. If you're in a very small museum, the opportunities for great pay aren't super, but if you get into a bigger museum, they certainly are. But generally speaking, they're going to a full-time position will start around $30,000, and then if you get into a directorship or work at a bigger museum, you can get up to $120,000 a year. Typically, with a museum, you will find health benefits and vacation and dental and those great opportunities to have. So it really depends on what you do for museum and how big your museum is. So,
Awesome, thank you. Rebecca, I'm sure that in your agency there's entry-level positions as well as degreed positions. Could you tell us a little bit about the differences in those positions and what that pay scale would be as well as benefits?
Sure. Very similar to what Mike just said. It kind of runs the gambit. So an entry level would be somebody that's coming really right out of college, almost in, an advanced internship, and that's really in the low 30s. But what we see in the agency side is the advancement is great and can be really quick as long as you are committed to it and focused on it. And so mid-level, and really what the difference is, number of years of experience that they bring to the table and what they bring to the table. And if they're specialized, like in social media or public relations or graphic design. So, mid-level might be 50 to 70. It's a big range, I understand. Higher level, 80 to 90. And then higher than that is probably in the 1 to 200s, right? And so it really depends. I also, agency is a lot different than corporate. So corporate organizations, what I mean by that is like working for a hospital or a corporation, pay scales differ there as well greatly. But it also comes with benefits, and most agencies come with benefits, not all of them, but corporations certainly do as well.
So it's interesting that in your field there's agencies and then there's corporate levels.
Yeah.
So there's a big ladder that can be climbed.
Absolutely, and back and forth, and it's not even in the marketing departments. A lot of people will go from starting in marketing, but maybe they'll have a leadership position in another area of the company because they understand the organization so well. Because marketing usually in a corporation really runs a gambit across the board of knowing operations, leadership, specific entities within the organization, product lines, et cetera, and allows growth in a lot of areas. So it doesn't have to be, just marketing. It could be leadership in another area of the company. We've seen people that have started in marketing in a corporation and now are like the COO, the operations manager, because they understand the full gamut of what the organization does and runs.
Awesome, thank you so much, great answer. Oh, okay. So Erin, we're just going to kind of ask you the same type of question. We kind of already talked about the opportunity for advancement. We're going to talk now about the salary and benefits that are included in the positions. And if you feel in your industry that some type of college would be sufficient, or if entry level is fine and they can just work their way up.
Definitely. So kind of like you said, there's all different steps you can take. So there are certainly some entry-level positions. We don't necessarily require much specific training or education. However, it's definitely useful and beneficial. And like you said, you may grasp on to, someone has a proficiency in marketing and can definitely come and, run the social media side of things or help with any press releases, things like that. That's going to be much more beneficial than, someone who just kind of wants to work in the back and in the shop and things like that. So while there's no specific formal recommendations, I would definitely say that it's helpful to have, some sort of schooling under your belt. in terms of how that relates to advancement and salary and things like that, as mentioned, we really only have 2 kind of salary or full-time positions at our shop. However, I know in looking at those bigger, like you said, kind of more of those bigger corporations or larger city type companies, they have multiple roles for whether they're commission driven because it's a sales opportunity and they're the ones pitching and working with the clients, or whether it is the operations and the management side of things where you have some higher level salaries available. So there's definitely within the and I guess I should clarify, we are a florist, but we're also event production is kind of how we classify ourselves. So, most people think of kind of the mom and pop shops as far as florists, and yes, you're maybe a little limited, but definitely have some opportunities for creativity and passion and, that type of lifestyle. But once you get into the event production side, and, that's just a huge industry nationwide, unfortunately, obviously being very impacted by current events, but it's just there are so many avenues you can pursue both on the floral side of things, but also on all of the different logistics, management, marketing, things like that go with it. And those would then have that need for more formal schooling or business degrees, as well as the opportunities then for further salary capacities.
And if I can just play off a little bit of what you guys have talked about, the difference between the small institutions and the larger ones. When you work for a smaller organization or company or small museum, you tend to do a lot of different things. You tend to work in every department. I do a little bit of marketing, I do a little bit of accounting, I do a little bit of education, I do a little bit of development. And I'm sure that's true for you guys in your companies the size. When you get to a bigger company, you tend to end up focusing on one particular thing. So if you do like one thing and like to focus on just putting the flowers together or just doing the marketing, you can find jobs that do that. But if you like to do a variety of things, a smaller organization will allow you to do a variety of things and have that differentiation in your day.
Absolutely.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, great. Thank you. That's awesome. That's really great feedback. And we appreciate all that you guys are giving here. This is great feedback. One of the, a couple of other questions that we want to ask, Mike, to you. What interests you most about getting into this career, and how important was life balance for you when you chose this career?
Well, I wanted a career where I could have fun. I wanted a career where I could work with kids, and I wasn't sure how to do that when I was in school, but then I did an internship, so heads up to internships. I did an internship at Health Education Center in Peoria where I got to work with kids. I got to do programs with kids and do some entertaining in the education field, and that really hooked me. And so for life, I've always wanted to be on stage, working with kids, entertaining kids, and teaching them at the same time. And then finding a museum that really focuses on the mission of what we do as opposed to all the other things that surround the museum, but focused on what we do and the importance of play and kids learning. And so finding something that fit my passion really made it so it's not a job or something I have to worry about going to, but I love what I do and I love where I do it. So I think that's important to find that in a job.
Thank you, Michael. Rebecca, I'm going to kind of direct this question to the students because I know a lot of times in the classrooms they hear from their teachers, their administrators, their counselors about teamwork and getting along. How do you work alone and collaborate with others, and how does it affect you when that teamwork piece falls apart and you're depending on someone else to do their piece and they're not getting it done?
That is a really great question, and I will tell you that we hire for culture first and skill set second. And so certainly we need the people on our team to have certain skill sets, but if we feel like they will not get along with other team members, and our entire team interviews everybody that comes onto our team, so they kind of go through a process of being interviewed by several people, and everybody has feedback. If they don't feel like they're gonna be able to get along with that person, or there's something that happens in the interview that seems to set them apart or doesn't seem like they're gonna be a good team player, the team has the opportunity to put the brakes on. So culture is one of the highest things. So what I can say to students is, be open to being on a team wherever you're at, whether in a corporate setting, whether in settings with my colleagues here, or an agency or anywhere else, because that will get you so much farther than even a skill set will. So certainly it's important to be able to work on your own and get things done. Results are important. Having a skill set, results, impact, outcomes are going to be important. as well as making sure you can go to your team member and say, hey, you're overburdened, how can I help you? You know who sees that is that team member and the boss. And they remember those things as they grow the organization, because they want to grow the organization with like-minded people, open-minded people. People are respectful to others and open to growing. And that's, teamwork is a growth mentality. It otherwise, go and silo yourself at a desk working from home and not having any connection. But teamwork and interaction is so critical for any organization. As 100,000 people or 7 people large, doesn't matter. Number one thing.
That's a great answer. So it's good for students to understand that when they're told a lot of times how important teamwork is, it really starts with kind of getting along with others, conflict resolution, being able to work through those differences in a manner that's not escalated to a point where it's, not a good situation. So it's good to know too that in a business, you look at that individual's personality and they can be placed in more of a job where they can stand alone and they don't absolutely have to always do teamwork. But it's good to know that the culture is really what leads you.
And I would add on to that, not everything is unicorns and rainbows, right? And so there are going to be times in your career that tough things happen. You're working with somebody that you may not get along with, you may have challenges with, but figuring out how to work through that is going to be important. So learning that skill set early on in high school or college, in your personal life, is really important, because that can really carry over the lessons learned before you get to your career and you're starting to grow in it. Challenges always happen in business. It just will. And it's important to learn how to deal with it now versus, when you're 45.
Well, and it's good to know, too, as a student, that there is no perfect job. There are going to be obstacles, there are going to be differences, and we just work with them the best that we can. So that was a great, great explanation. Thank you for that.
I guess one thing you could answer for us, Erin, is what makes your company unique?
Sure. So I think the way the company was founded and kind of the initial principle is what does make us unique, kind of like I touched on before. We're not just a florist. We've kind of built beyond that. So we offer a full range of different rentals, linens, things like that. So we really try to bring an experience and a convenience to a customer that they can come to us to kind of fulfill the full decor side of their event or their their occasion. So in addition to that, we also just really kind of like you mentioned with teamwork, we want to create a customer experience that's above and beyond, and truly we do bring a team to the table, not just kind of a simple, deliver. It's an experience. It's more than just the product. It's the service and the product combined. So we like to think that we are, high quality and working with integrity and things like that. So, we're a team as a company, but we're also a team with the client and the customer in bringing their vision to life.
So you kind of take some of the stress away for the people that are planning the big weddings or the big conferences.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the hope. We sometimes get the hat of event planner, and we don't quite go that. We don't claim that ourselves, but it is that we're able to kind of consolidate and coordinate so that they're not having to get things from 5 different places and then match a color across 5 different places or match a timeline across 5 different vendors. And definitely just simplifies, solidifies, and gives them that confidence that things are going to come to life the way that they were anticipating.
That's awesome. So you're very service-oriented. So having a good personality and liking people and being able to just really provide that service for them is also very important for your company.
Yeah, absolutely. It goes beyond just the product delivered. It's how does it get delivered, and was the customer being, cared for and treated for along the way. And like you said, sometimes there are not necessarily conflicts, but you may have a different personality than the client. How do you mitigate that and work together so that it is a success and that they're getting what they dreamed of?
Awesome. Michael, what advice do you have for someone that would step into the role that you currently are in? What advice would you give a student today?
Well, I think be flexible, because you never know what's going to come to your desk on any particular day. I've always tried to, as a manager, make the lives of my employees easier. So my job is to help them do their jobs and help them be successful, because if my employees are successful, then the organization will be. So I find, I check in with my staff, I said, do you need help with anything? What do you need to do? And I try to know how to do their job, so when they need help, I can jump in and help them. So I always think of that as servant leadership. My job is to serve my staff so they can do their jobs well. And so I think that's important, be flexible and be willing to help others. And the other big thing is, when you make a mistake, admit to it, make it right, and learn from it, because we're all gonna make mistakes. And that's one thing about being on a team, is if you make a mistake on a team, you admit to it, you apologize for it, and then you make it right. And then you're gonna gain a lot of respect by being able to admit that and then make it right.
That's great. Thank you. That's great advice for our students. And that's just a good way to get them prepared for what kind of career they want to go into, no matter which field that career is in. Rebecca, same question to you. And then Erin will be same question to you as well, because that's going to kind of round up our panel. So if you want to go ahead, Rebecca, and then Erin, if you want to take that as well.
I couldn't agree more with what Mike is saying. Flexibility, if you want to grow in your career, learning different areas of the company, whether you're at a corporation or whether you're at an agency, is going to be so helpful, because you can jump in and help others and talk about that teamwork approach, and working across all the areas. People notice that. Your supervisors notice that. The boss notices that. I would say be engaged, be enthusiastic. I know it's hard sometimes to be all those things and be perky and happy, and certainly that's not what I'm saying, but be engaged enough to know what the goals of the company are, not what your personal goals are, but what the goals of the company are: to grow, to inspire, to provide customer service to the individuals and the clients you work with. Also, one of the biggest things for a takeaway, I would say, is you're always going to have feedback, especially early on in your career. Take that and own it and learn from it. Not just the mistakes, which I think is really good advice, because the more you stand up and like, that was, I do that, right? We all do it. And like, I made a mistake. People respect you more for that. And suddenly they trust you more for that. But also, when people are giving you feedback, like in our agency, we'll say, we need to rewrite this isn't quite right, or we need to move how we're doing this or whatever. And the more open somebody is to accept that feedback and then make the change, the more that they learn. But also, again, that is seen as very company-oriented and allows people to grow. And the supervisor or the CEO or whomever it is will say, this one's a keeper, because they're willing to take that insight and learn from it, versus pushing back and being defensive about it. It's really easy to get defensive when you worked really hard on something, but as importantly, it's more important to grow in your career and your personal and professional development growth.
Awesome. Well, I think those are both very encompassing of anything I would say as well, but just kind of jumping off of them again. You mentioned the idea of taking criticism, being able to grow, take the feedback, things like that. I think first and foremost, just being authentic and having good character. It doesn't serve anyone well to kind of put on a face or hide behind credentials. Like you said, it's more important to have that character and be able to work well and build into the culture that the company is, as well as be able to work well with the clients. And so at the end of the day, we always talk about being service-driven and company-driven. Those goals are more important than, maybe thinking the project was exactly the way you wanted. Was it serving of the greater purpose and things like that? So definitely just be willing, be always on your toes to learn, to grow. Even if it's not company directed, kind of take in from sources outside. I always talk about in the event side of things, we have a lot of our staff that's kind of watching social media on their own and seeing the trends, and they'll come in and they'll say, oh my gosh, look what I saw in the magazine, or did you watch so-and-so's wedding on, The Bachelor or whatever. And so kind of keeping in touch with what's happening in the outside world and being able to relate that to your field and to your company, just kind of like you said, makes you noticed and by management or by ownership, and shows that you're kind of thinking constantly, kind of dwelling and processing and being able to take the ideas that you work on day to day and continue to further them.
And if I can add on to that, and I think we can all agree that where you start your career is not necessarily where you're going to end it. That happens very rarely. So how you interact with people or clients or team members, will be seen from the outside as well. Maybe that team member that you've had a good relationship with, that you grew with, now goes to a larger company with a bigger role. They're going to remember you and maybe tag you and refer you into business, right? So everybody's connected some way, and usually people are hired by, a lot of times, the references and referrals that they get in. And so not only does your business grow, but also your professional development. So, you know, I love your word authentic, be authentic in everything you do, because, you know, no matter where you go in the world, people are kind of watching and engaging with you, and that could be a huge growth and professional development opportunity for you as well.
Very great. Those were wonderful answers. Well, we just want to thank you for being with us again today, and this will wrap it up for our Business Pathway panel. And just have a wonderful day, and thank you so much for being with us today and talking to our students.
Thank you.
Thank you.